That is what is so amazing about this solution, is that you can start small. You can start with your most risk-filled documents, the documents you know have a high probability of being audited. Protect those documents. Not only do you not have to start with every single department, you can start with a single department and one process.
On this edition of Capture Capitalist, we're going to be sitting down with Tom Garucha, the Senior Product Evangelist from Hyland Software, talking about a brand new piece of technology that's emerged in the market called Governance Rules as a Service. Without any further delay, let's get started. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Tom, and what you do at Hyland Software, how long you've been there, maybe a little fun fact about Mr. Tom that the general public doesn't know.
Absolutely. Sounds good. So my name is Tom Garucha. I am a product evangelist with Hyland. Been with the company about 9 years now, and I have been evangelizing our retention solutions for about 7 of those 9 years. And a little fun fact about me, I am a massive Simpsons fan. I can take on essentially anybody in Simpsons trivia. That is a total open challenge. If you happen to see me at a Hyland conference or an IDC event, absolutely ask me any question, seasons 1 through 13, let's call it there.
All right. Well, my wife would stand toe-to-toe with you on that subject.
Well, we're going to have to do that at some point. We're going to have a throwdown. I like that.
All right. Awesome. So tell us a little bit about Governance Rules as a Service and what's been going on with Hyland Software and Iron Mountain in that arena. It's something new that's come to market that we haven't heard about before until recently. It was announced at Community Live 2019, but I know it's been something you guys have been working on for, I think, over a year, correct?
Yeah, it's been closer to 2 years, actually. And for anyone that was at Community Live 2018, we actually did debut the solution in sort of a beta fashion. That was something very new for us at Hyland Software. And what I will say is this solution in general, Governance Rules as a Service, is a new kind of solution offering for Hyland Software for a couple of different reasons. Of course, first and foremost, we have partnered with Iron Mountain on this solution. It's one of the first times that we are actually bundling another company's software with one of our solutions. And we did that for a very specific reason. We had been seeking out a partnership with Iron Mountain for quite some time. This just so happened to be the right avenue to pursue that partnership. You know, Iron Mountain has been pretty much the top name in retention for quite some time. They have 200,000 customers across the globe that have trusted them with their physical documents for a very, very long time. You know, a lot of people watching this probably already have a relationship with Iron Mountain. They are those trucks that come and back into your office maybe once a week to pick up your boxes and take them to the storage facility and bring you back other boxes. You've been trusting that company with your physical items for a long time now. And what they have built up through their own solution offerings is this piece of software they call PolicyCenter, which is essentially an online retention schedule library where they can actually take the kinds of documents that you store and map them to individual retention rules. And they will actually perform all of the research. They have a network of, I believe it's 60 plus international law firms that they partner with to perform this kind of retention specific research and build up what is essentially a giant library of retention rules that they can then map to each one of your individual kinds of documents that you're storing in OnBase. So they are providing the research with this solution, which is so valuable. And of course, what we are bringing from a Hyland Software standpoint is what we've always brought to this party is the automation, right? The ability to automatically destroy documents in accordance with those retention rules that are researched and laid out by Iron Mountain, again, using their years and years and years of knowledge and expertise in the area. Something we have not really offered up until this point, addressing one of the biggest gaps that we've had in our retention offerings since they were first introduced over a decade ago.
So PolicyCenter is not new. It's well established. OnBase isn't new. It's it goes back to what, 1992, I want to say. The document retention module is not new, but the two of them being glued together, if you will, that's what's new, correct?
Yeah, that is absolutely something that we have been looking to offer for quite some time now. Again, mainly because one of the biggest gaps we had with our automation is that, hey, we simply didn't tell you how long you were supposed to keep your stuff. We at Hyland never wanted to really get into that business. You know, I have been presenting at our user conference, Community Live, for pretty much my entire career at this point, almost 10 years. And I would teach classes on our document retention product because it's been around forever. And I would tell all my customers about all the wonderful automation that that product would provide. And inevitably, a hand would shoot up back of the room. Somebody would always ask this specific question. Hey, this is great. I love the automation, love what it can do. Don't you just have a list of document types you can hand me and how long I'm supposed to keep them? I know that you have customers in my industry, dozens, maybe even hundreds of customers in my industry. You don't just maintain a list of document types and their common retention period so I can just plug it into this great product. And I would have to stand up at the podium and say, well, no, I'm not a lawyer. We don't really want to maintain a list like that. Once you do get all the right stakeholders in the room and you all agree on what those retention periods should be, I've got great news. Once you actually sit down and start configuring OnBase, it's maybe 4 or 5 different text fields you got to fill out. However, what we found is that most customers never got to that point because they could never do the research or get everybody to agree on what their standard retention policies should be. So rather than starting with something, they just did nothing and they just kept everything forever. And that's why we really wanted to pursue this type of solution so we could provide customers with that list so they didn't have to do that research themselves. And we found the perfect partner in Iron Mountain and PolicyCenter to finally offer that type of information along with the automation provided by Doc Retention.
In that research, a customer would have to either go to their general counsel to have them be the authoritative figure on that subject, or they have to go and contract with a consulting firm or an outside law firm to bring that knowledge in-house, right? And that tends to be an expensive, arduous, or a long, drawn-out kind of process, correct?
Correct. It tends to be several months, 6, 9, 12, 18 months, and it tends to cost a lot, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars. And that is what prevents a lot of companies from going down that direction, because when they hear the term retention schedule, those are the images that pop up in their head. Oh, this is going to take forever. It's going to be so expensive. And all I'm really doing is just preventing myself from having to spend more money in the future. So it tends to not be as high of a priority as something like, oh, a new capture technology or new workflow process automation technology, because there's a real ROI associated with that, right? However, if you do not pay attention to or provide any service to that retention side of the house, you could have the best automated solution in place that has saved you so much money and you've realize such an incredible ROI from it. However, the minute you are audited and fined for keeping documents longer than you should have as a part of that solution, you're going to see all of that ROI evaporate pretty quickly in fines and fees from those compliance organizations that found something that you weren't supposed to have. Right.
One of the amazing things that I recall in your presentation when you guys unveiled this to the partner community is the fact that Iron Mountain with PolicyCenter has aggregated this wealth of knowledge, not only based here in the States, but worldwide, with respect to document types that many customers use, especially ones that are global based or operate in multiple jurisdictions. So they've aggregated all this information, and for a customer to be able to turn that knowledge into a working system that turns that capability on inside OnBase to automatically set dispositions, times, and based on events and dates. I mean, it's a relatively easy process, correct? Can you help the viewers understand what that experience is like, and is it months, quarters, years for them to get something like this implemented?
Well, I will say that the goal with this solution is to make the deployment phase of it as simple and straightforward and quick as possible, because one of the main drivers of this solution from an Iron Mountain and Hyland perspective is to allow you to start small. so that you don't have to turn this into several months, several quarters, 18 months, hundreds and thousands of dollars worth of project costs to do an entire content audit on your whole organization. What you can do is start with one business process that you know has a lot of liability associated with it. You can associate retention rules with the documents that are being automated as a part of that process. Ensure that you are protected in that area of the business, then move on to another area of the business and start with a fresh new set of document types. So you don't have to have this overbearing feeling of, well, we have to make sure that we include every single piece of content across the entire organization. And if I'm missing even one kind of document, forget it, we're not turning anything on. It's this all or nothing mindset that we're really trying to combat with this solution, so that again, you can protect your highest liability documents and do something instead of nothing. Instead of just sticking your head in the sand and continuing to pretend like these documents are not a liability, you can actually start taking action on them today and continue to expand that mentality across other business lines, across other areas of the business that OnBase touches. So that is definitely one of the main drivers for this solution. And we want people to get out of this mindset of, well, I'm going to do either everything or nothing, and absolutely nothing in between. You know, it's a spectrum, right? And right. That is one of the main pieces that is unique to this solution that we are finding, not only on the Hyland side, but on the Iron Mountain side as well.
You know, in the old document retention days, right, where you would go to your general counsel and say, okay, tell us how long we're supposed to keep this stuff around, or you hire an outside contractor or a law firm to come in. That's not a one-time event. I mean, these things change, right? So the amazing thing inside a PolicyCenter I saw was the ability for dynamically these retention rules as they change, because the aggregator of this information is Iron Mountain, who has a network of many law firms around the world. As these policies get updated, that gets pushed out and pushed down to your OnBase instance. And then as the document records retention person, you could say whether or not I want to change my retention schedules or I'm going to leave them as is. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's really the service portion of this solution. Yeah, there's a ton of value in delivering that initial retention schedule for your OnBase documents, especially if you weren't doing anything to move or act on those policies today. There's a ton of value there, but the continuous value that the solution delivers is that oversight of Iron Mountain, checking on their retention rules on a regular basis and informing you when that information changes. So you're always executing on the latest information, the latest rules, the latest laws, the latest regulations. And again, they are building up this entire library of retention information based on industry, based on jurisdiction. It's essentially like walking into the library and just pulling a bunch of books off the shelf. You know, you don't have to do that research yourself. It's already been done for you. Take advantage of that knowledge, take advantage of the work that's been done. And as more and more customers start realizing the benefits of this solution, that library is just going to continue to grow. So yes, tons of value in receiving that finished product in the retention schedule for the list of document types you provide Iron Mountain. But really the continuous value is the fact that, hey, Iron Mountain will tell you themselves, they expect about 10% of that entire legal research library to turn over on a yearly basis. The problem is they don't know what 10% it's going to be, and you don't know what 10% it's going to be. Yeah. So that service piece of the solution ensures that, hey, if a retention rule changes that you should be aware of, you will be made aware of. You can accept those changes via PolicyCenter, and those changes will then be executed in your OnBase solution by document retention.
Where's a great place for a customer to start with governance rules as a service? Do they need to turn the entire organization over and you know, I can't do anything until we get every department and every document or record figured out what we're going to do with, or can they chunk it? Can they break things off into chunks and start in a more manageable type of approach and not disrupt the entire organization?
Not only do you not have to start with every single department. You can start with a single department and one process within that department. You know, we have built the solution so that you can start small and grow over time. And I'll tell you, with many of the conversations I have had with customers since we have officially unveiled this solution, a vast majority of them are looking to start in human resources, simply because it is a shared back office activity, touches every vertical, everybody's got employees, and there are very specific laws and regulations that govern how long you should be keeping those documents and when you're going to start that retention timer. So it makes sense for many customers to start in HR, not just because of the laws and regulations that are specific to those document types, but the simple fact that many customers buy OnBase initially to automate processes in HR. And it makes so much sense to couple this kind of project with an expansion of a platform like OnBase into that area of the business. There's no better time to start looking at how you're classifying documents, what kind of information is on those documents, how you're going to continue to classify them in the future, because that type of information, that metadata, does and will affect how those retention rules get associated with those documents. So it makes so much sense to do both things at the same time, not only automate a process with OnBase, but also take a look at what you're going to do with those documents once they reach their logical end of life.
Viewers that are going to be listening or watching to this, and they're going to be like, you know, I think this is something our organization should take a look at. Who should they take this kind of information to? Who would be the right people inside of an organization to bring the governance rules as a service offering to their attention?
Well, I think first and foremost, you need to start with the owner of the OnBase solution, simply because it is an OnBase specific retention policy that we're going to enact. And it is the person that owns the OnBase solution that's going to be most interested in protecting that investment, to ensuring that the ROI that you're receiving from that OnBase solution is going to continue to produce in the future. Because again, there is a liability that at some point, if you keep a document for longer than you need to or are legally required to, you could be fined for having possession of that document. And it is that fine that could wipe out a good chunk of that ROI. And it is the solution owner that is first and foremost going to be very interested in that. And that is what is so amazing about this solution, is that you can start small. You can start with your most risk-filled documents, the documents you know have a high probability of being audited. Protect those documents, protect the investment you've made in that area of OnBase, and then move on to another area of business.
So does the OnBase system administrator need to get the compliance officer involved, the legal department? I mean, if we're talking about legal risk and things like that, I mean, C-levels need to eventually be involved in this decision process. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and we're starting to see that as the solution is coming out to market, where those roles will come to the table. But again, I think what we're bringing from a uniqueness standpoint is this idea of taking some action today, doing something instead of nothing. And what we're finding is people in the legal department, people like chief compliance officers, they appreciate that it does not have to be this overarching complete content audit of the entire organization. They can start with one system. They can start with the process in that system that contains the most liability. They can plug that hole and move on. So they can start automating document destruction today instead of waiting and running the risk of those high liability documents being found in the system when they should have been destroyed years ago. So it's combating this idea of paralysis analysis where, well, if I can't protect everything, I'm just going to do nothing and wait until that magical day comes.
A lot of that.
When I will be able to turn on this solution and I'm going to destroy every document across the entire enterprise. I'm here to tell you that's not going to happen. So you'd much rather do something than nothing, right? And this solution allows you to do that. Okay, well, we're going to start off the demonstration here in Iron Mountain's PolicyCenter. And recall, PolicyCenter is that web-based application where you will access all the different retention rules that have been assigned to the different OnBase document types that you provided Iron Mountain. So at this point in the story, you have actually provided Iron Mountain with the list of document types you would like the retention research performed upon, and to take a look at that retention information that's been associated with those document types, you will access that information here through PolicyCenter. You can see on the left-hand side here, we can actually take a look at those governance rules or that retention information by document type group. So we can see a group for AP documents here, for HR documents, for other areas of the business. You can also see that I can actually search for a specific document type or retention rule across the entire organization if I want. But I'll go ahead and just take a look at some of the HR rules that we have associated with the different document types in OnBase. So we'll go ahead and access those HR rules, and you'll see individual rules for dozens of different document types here. You can see a wide array of different kinds of documents that are already associated here in PolicyCenter. What I want to do is show you an example of a specific document type that does have retention information associated with it. If we take a look at the retention information for our HR benefit change request forms, we'll see on the right-hand side some information about that doc type here in PolicyCenter. We'll see some identification information here. We'll see some record class details. What I want to specifically point your attention to, however, is the retention information associated with this individual document type. And we'll see it here listed again on the right-hand side. We will see the jurisdiction that this document type is referencing. We'll also see the minimum retention period for that doc type, and here it is listed as 6 years. And we'll see the retention trigger for that doc type listed as well. In this case, it is the day that the employee terminates. So the day the employee separates from the organization, we will keep this specific document type for 6 years, and we will then destroy it using OnBase document retention. The important thing to note here is that, of course, we did not do any of this research to come up with this information. Iron Mountain performed that research for us and associated that research with this specific kind of document for us in PolicyCenter. And as I hover over this retention information, you'll notice a little pen icon here. That is an edit button that allows me to go in and actually change any of this information if I so choose. What Iron Mountain is providing here is essentially a starting point for you. You can absolutely run with this information and use it in your OnBase solution, or you can make changes as necessary as called for by your specific business policies. So while Iron Mountain is providing you with this information, it is essentially a foundation or a starting point. If you need to make changes, you absolutely can. And those changes are actually tracked in a separate audit log that is specific to PolicyCenter. Now, what could also be far more interesting for your legal and compliance folks is this citation tab here. And what this citation tab will actually show you is the individual laws and regulations that were cited by Iron Mountain's team of international law firms to come up with that retention information we just saw. So this is the actual letter of the law, the actual text from the law that Iron Mountain's lawyers actually referenced to come up with that 6-year retention period and that retention trigger of employee separation. We can see a number of different citations that were actually referenced for this individual document type. And you get this type of information for every single document type that you provide Iron Mountain. So this is really where the value of the solution comes into play, because again, you do not have to dedicate the time, money, and resources to doing any of this research yourself. Iron Mountain is providing it for you within this web-based portal. And of course, part of what you're getting as included with the service with this solution is the fact that Iron Mountain is going to actively, on a regular basis, review these citations, review the retention information, and make changes to it if needed. You will be alerted to any changes that are made, and you will accept them here through PolicyCenter, and those changes will be recorded as a part of this retention rules audit log. So of course, that is part one of the solution. What we have here is essentially a fully formed retention schedule for your OnBase document types. Now, part two of the solution is the Hyland Retention Connector. And this is actually a web-based administrative tool that your OnBase admins can use to actively pull the record information from PolicyCenter and automatically use it to configure doc retention settings in OnBase config. So on the left-hand side, what we are actually looking at here is retention information pulled directly from PolicyCenter, the same retention information that we just saw in the PolicyCenter web portal, pulled into this administrative tool. On the right-hand side, what we'll see is retention settings that are automatically going to be put in place for those individual document types based on the retention information pulled from PolicyCenter. And as you can see, this isn't just for a handful of document types, it's for every single document type that has a retention rule associated with it in PolicyCenter. And again, what this retention connector is going to do is automatically pull the latest retention information by document type from PolicyCenter. And essentially, with the click of one button, I can take all of that retention information and automatically configure document retention settings for each one of those doc types with, again, one click of a button. We'll see a message here pop up in just a second that the following retention rules and settings have been automatically pushed into OnBase. So not only has the research been done for me already, I was actively able to configure retention settings for dozens, hundreds, or even thousands of different document types with essentially one click of a button. So you get all of that research included, but your OnBase admins also end up saving a ton of time and effort from having to go into each individual document type and set those settings on a one-by-one basis. So really nice time saver tool here. What this retention connector essentially is the integration piece between PolicyCenter and OnBase. And
this is that missing link that we were talking about earlier. This what
creates the link.
Yeah, this is what takes the two systems that, let's say in the past, weren't able to talk to each other because there was no software to do this. You had the knowledge and the lawyers going off doing their own thing. You had OnBase building the document management, document retention capability, but the automatic linking of the two didn't exist until governance rules as a service came to market. And
That's correct.
This is the missing link.
Yeah, so this is the new piece. This is the piece of the puzzle that completes the whole thing.
Yep, got it. Awesome.
So just to show you, we actually do have those retention settings reflected in OnBase. So of course, remember, we were taking a look at those HR benefit change request forms. If I actually check the retention settings for those documents in OnBase, we will see that not only are those retention settings grayed out, it's the same settings that we saw in PolicyCenter, that retention period of 6 years, that keyword of employee termination starting the clock, that was automatically configured for me by the retention connector. You'll also see a new banner here in OnBase indicating that the retention settings for this document type are managed by an external system. Of course, that external system being PolicyCenter. And we gray this out in OnBase for a very specific reason. It's because we want PolicyCenter to remain the source of truth for retention policy for the organization. So if you need to make any changes to this information, we want those changes to be reflected in PolicyCenter first and then pushed into OnBase using the retention connector that we just saw a second ago.
Awesome. Now this PolicyCenter solution, governance rules as a service, is it sold as an on-premise system, or is it sold as a cloud solution, and how do I get those ongoing updates?
Yeah, that's a great question, mainly because there has been some confusion. While this PolicyCenter piece is web only and this retention connector is a web-based tool, what if I'm an on-premise customer? The good news is that both on-prem and in the cloud, OnBase customers can absolutely take advantage of this solution. Now, the PolicyCenter piece will always live in the cloud, and the retention connector piece can be installed in the cloud or on-premise, and your OnBase solution can be either in the cloud or on-premise.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
No problem. Now, just to close the book, I'd like to show you a document destroyed by document retention, actually referencing these same doc retention settings that came from PolicyCenter. So just to flip over to our Unity client for a second, you'll notice that we have a number of those benefit change request forms in the system already. If I take a look at the data associated with Andrew Lincoln's form here, we will notice that it's been quite a while since he's been terminated from the company. In fact, you'll see a termination date back in 2012 here, far more than the 6-year retention period that we had set for these actual forms. Again, that information coming straight from PolicyCenter. Now, in order for OnBase to actually destroy these documents as a part of document retention, what I need to do very quickly is just run what we call the purge processor with document retention. And all this processor is going to do is essentially take a look at all the documents in the system, and it's going to destroy any documents in the system for which their retention period has elapsed or has ended. So if we go ahead and actually take a look at Andrew's benefit change request here form one more time, we'll notice that this form has now actually been destroyed, and it's been replaced by what we're calling a certificate of destruction, which is something brand new in OnBase, in this brand new version, OnBase Foundation EP1. You'll see a placeholder document here that gives me some context behind this destroyed document, when it was added into the system, what date it was destroyed on, what the keywords are. So giving me, as the retriever, just some context about this document that once existed. So that's just closing the book to show you a document actually destroyed by document retention. Again, referencing the settings and retention information coming from PolicyCenter. It's a great way to see all the pieces of the solution come together in one solution.
Yeah, I can't agree with you more. I mean, so now in the event of litigation or discovery or something going on inside of an organization, if they get asked to produce a document that, let's say, the opposing counsel thinks is in question and should be able to be produced, if my document destruction policy said I had the right to go ahead and destroy this, in this case, what is today, 1021, then when I produce this particular document, this shows I am within compliance. I have adhered to what my document retention policy said I was allowed to do, correct?
Yeah, you've got the destruction date here. You also have all those legal citations and the retention information in PolicyCenter as well. So not only can you show the policy that you followed, you can show the execution of that policy as well with this certificate of destruction.
Yeah, this is fantastic. This really helps paint the picture. We talked a little bit about the technology and how it all came to being, but now to actually see how this would work in a customer's environment, in a real world setting, this really paints the picture very well. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you putting this together for us.
You've seen pretty much everything there is to see. Best case scenario, you don't see any of this happening. It just happens in the background. It is managed by OnBase on a day in, day out basis. You can focus your time and attention on more important things rather than making sure that you're referencing the right retention rules and you're managing retention schedules and periods. OnBase takes care of all that for you. So most of this, the vast majority, should be happening in the background.
I remember you telling the story in the partner kickoff meeting about this solution when you guys unveiled it before Community Live. You told this story of a customer who was an early adopter of this that went through this process. It was relatively quick, and when they turned this, discovery, I'm not sure what the right term would be, the purge process to identify the documents that are eligible to be destroyed. It was quite an epiphany for them, a revelation, so to speak, of all of these documents that were candidates eligible to be destroyed. Can you tell us a little bit about that story in your own words?
Yeah, so we actually partnered with one of our customers as a part of our early access program. It's essentially a beta program at Hyland, and they were in the public utility space. More importantly, though, they adopted this solution just for their HR documents, and they provided Iron Mountain with a list of 33 HR document types. I'm sure a lot of people watching have far, far more HR document types than just that. So 33 HR document types. Iron Mountain took that list, mapped their existing retention research and that retention information to those 33 HR document types. The public utilities company then turned on document retention, again, referencing that retention information laid out by PolicyCenter. And when they actually ran that purge processor that we just saw, they found over 130,000 documents in their OnBase system that was eligible for destruction. 130,000 individual points of liability, individual points of risk that had been in their system that they had no idea was a problem until they were able to turn on this solution. So when I talk about starting small, you can start small, but the impact can still be huge. And again, if you just focus on one department, one process, it's better than doing nothing. It's better than letting those 130,000 points of risk sit in the system. You were doing something today, you weren't doing anything yesterday, you are moving in the right direction, absolutely. And it's a great, great example of that. And they were a great partner and they were a great customer to really just flesh out this solution. And we really learned a lot from them. But one of the biggest things we learned was just this idea of starting small can still have big, big results associated with it. And it didn't take a lot of time, a couple weeks from start to finish to gather the list of doc types, to ensure that we were mapping the right retention information to the right document types on the Iron Mountain side, and then just turning on the doc retention pieces in OnBase is a fairly simplistic process. So it can be quick. It can be far, far quicker than waiting for that outside law firm to come back with the results of their consulting work, after waiting months and months and months. Meanwhile, those 130K documents are still sitting in the OnBase system as points of liability and risk. This is a far more actionable way to solve that problem.
That's fantastic. That's a great story. That is a great story. So Tom, if you were to summarize for our viewing audience, what are a couple takeaways you'd like people to remember after watching this segment? One or two things that you'd want them to take away, maybe take to others inside their organization, say we really should consider governance rules as a service. What are those two key elements that we could help them with?
There's a couple of pieces of advice I would leave the customers I would talk to. I would just talk about retention in general that are still very applicable to this solution. And one is absolutely start small, focus on quick wins, because doing something today is far better than continuing to stick your head in the sand and pretend that this is not a problem, that you do not have this kind of risk or liability in your solution today. Because with the advent of all these new retention regulations coming out at this point on what feels like a daily basis, this type of risk is only going to compound on itself. It's not going to get any easier. So you can't wait around until a point where you feel like you're in a good position to finally take action on this. Every day that you do not take action, that risk continues to compound on itself. And what this solution really is a simplistic way to do something rather than nothing. So absolutely focus on quick wins, start small. This is a great solution to do that. And I think the other big takeaway here is to really think about this solution as an insurance policy on your OnBase solution, especially if you're already an OnBase customer today. You know it, you love it, you've been using it to automate all these amazing processes across your organization. You do not want to see your return on that investment wiped away from a single audit or a series of fines from keeping documents for too long. It's a really disappointing way to see that ROI disappear from something as simple as, well, I kept a document for longer than I should have. When a solution like this exists today, the excuses are becoming few and far between to not have something like this in every single OnBase solution.
Well, that's fantastic, Tom. I think those are two very good pieces of wisdom for viewers that are listening to what we have to say today, and being able to take it as an actionable items back into their organization and do something with this information, this valuable information that we shared with them today. I can't again thank you enough for taking the time out of your day to spend with us. This has been a great comprehensive overview. We heard a lot, we've seen a lot. I think it's of great value to existing OnBase customers, but also those that are out there contemplating, what do I do with this plethora of documents and data that I have sitting around in my organization, and what can I do to protect the company from organizational liabilities or risks? And we've got a very formidable offering in the marketplace that they should be considering. So I really do thank you for taking the time, giving us this comprehensive overview. Certainly was a pleasure. I can't get enough listening to this stuff myself. This is probably, I don't know, 5 or 6 times I've heard the messaging and the information and seen the demo, and I keep learning something new every time that occurs. So I greatly appreciate it.
Yeah, it's hard to get this excited about retention, but we're finally in a place where, we've got something really, really exciting to talk about. And thank you for having me. Always great to have something exciting to talk about when it comes to retention. So we are shouting this one from the rooftops.
There's no doubt you're passionate about this topic. So it comes through loud and clear, my friend. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
No problem. Thank you.
Have a good day.